This is the only U.S. president I met and worked with, KALIN. That's a story for another day. You know what's incredible about Jimmy Carter? Here's a guy who went from being a peanut farmer to winning the Nobel Peace Prize, and that's not even the most surprising part of his story.
That's such an interesting way to look at his journey, Pappy. I mean, here's this deeply religious man known for his absolute honesty walking into the snake pit of Washington politics after Watergate. Talk about a culture clash.
And what's fascinating is how his outsider status shaped everything he did. Take the Camp David Accords. Here you have these two leaders, beginning Sadat, who could barely stand to be in the same room together, and Carter basically locked them away until they hammered out a peace deal. 13 straight days of personal diplomacy.
The level of dedication was unprecedented, studying their personalities, their pressure points, everything he could use to bring them together. It's still considered one of the most significant diplomatic achievements of the 20th century.
But here's what's really interesting: the same methodical, engineering minded approach that worked so well at Camp David sometimes completely backfired domestically, like during the energy crisis when he went on TV wearing a sweater and told Americans to turn down their thermostats.
Hmm, that's what's so fascinating about Carter. He was often right, but being right doesn't always make you popular, like the Panama Canal treaties, hugely controversial at the time, but absolutely the right call for improving Latin American relations.
The Iran hostage crisis really showed the limitations of his approach, though. 444 days of Americans held captive, and nothing he did seemed to work. The failed rescue mission was just devastating. 8 American servicemen died, and it really marked the beginning of the end for his presidency.
You know what's remarkable, though? He took that devastating end to his presidency and turned it into fuel for what might be the most impressive post presidency in American history. The Carter Center has nearly eradicated guinea worm disease and monitored over 100 elections worldwide.
And let's talk about how ahead of his time he was on so many issues. He put solar panels on the White House roof in 1979, created the Department of Energy, and appointed record numbers of women and minorities to federal positions. He was pushing for renewable energy decades before climate change became a mainstream issue.
That's precisely what makes his presidency so interesting to examine now. He faced this perfect storm of challenges: stagflation, an energy crisis, the Iran hostage situation, but many of his solutions were decades ahead of their time.
Speaking of stagflation, those economic numbers were brutal. Inflation hit 14.8%, unemployment was over 7%, and interest rates reached 20%. It's hard to get people to focus on moral leadership when they're paying that much interest on their mortgage.
Well, that really gets to the heart of his presidency. He was trying to address long term structural problems while people were dealing with immediate economic pain.
You know what quote of his really captures his whole approach? The measure of a society is found in how it treats its weakest and most helpless citizens. That really sums up both his governing philosophy and his post presidential work. He's always focused on helping those who need it most.
And that focus has really paid off in his post presidency. Through Habitat for Humanity alone, he's helped build more than 4,300 homes in 14 countries. That's pretty remarkable for someone who could have just retired to write memoirs.
When you look at his life as a whole, from peanut farmer to nuclear submarine officer to governor to president to global humanitarian, it's really an extraordinary American story. And that Nobel Peace Prize in 2002, that was recognition of his entire life's work, not just his presidency.
So, what do you think is the biggest lesson we can learn from Carter's story, Pappy?
I think it's that while being a good person doesn't guarantee political success, KALIN, it can lead to a different kind of legacy, one that might actually be more meaningful in the long run. Carter showed us that there's more than one way to serve your country and the world. Sometimes the most important work happens after you leave the highest office.